Hello and welcome to another session on Indian writing in English. We continue with Act 1 of Nagamandala. So the play, we understand from the prologue as to why this story is narrated, and the story starts to narrate the story which the playwright has promised to pass on, so that the oral tradition will live. And the playwright addresses the audience and tells them as to why this play is staged. And he asks for pardon from the audience and tells them that it is a matter of life and death. So therefore we have Act 1 and it begins, and the story Nagamandala is therefore set in motion. The locked front door of a house with a yard in front of the house, and on the right an enormous ant hill. The interior of the house, the kitchen, the bathroom as well as Rani's room is clearly seen. Story: a young girl. Her name, it doesn't matter. But she was an only daughter, so her parents called her Rani, Queen, Queen of the whole wide world, Queen of the long tresses. For when her hair was tied up in a knot, it was as though a black king cobra lay curled on the nape of her neck, coil upon glistening coil. When it hung loose, the tresses flowed, a torrent of black, along her young limbs and got entangled in her silver anklets. Her fond father found her a suitable husband. The young man was rich and his parents were both dead. Rani continued to live with her parents until she reached womanhood. Soon her husband came and took her with him to his village. His name was, any common name will do. Man. Appanna. Story: Appanna. So here we understand that they are not given any proper nouns, or they are not given any proper names. See how story says, it doesn't matter. Her name, it doesn't matter. We'll call her Rani or Queen. And when it comes to Appanna also, soon her husband came and took her with him to the village. His name was, and then story says, any common name will do. So the man names him Appanna, which means any man. So here the proper nouns are not used, the common nouns are used, which means, or which gives it a universal effect. So Rani becomes any woman who suffers under the evil patriarchal society. Appanna becomes any man, anyone who with that male chauvinistic attitude. So let's continue. Appanna enters, followed by Rani. They carry bundles in their arms, indicating that they have been traveling. Appanna opens a lock on the front door of the house. They go in. Appanna: have we brought in all the bundles? Rani: yes. Appanna: well then, I'll be back tomorrow at noon. Keep my lunch ready. I shall eat and go. Rani looks at him, non-puzzled. Rani looks at him, nonplussed. He pays no attention to her, goes out, shuts the door, locks it from the outside and goes away. She runs to the door, pushes it, finds it locked, peers out of the barred window. He's gone. Rani: listen, please. She does not know what is happening, stands perplexed. She cannot even weep. She goes and sits in a corner of her room, talks to herself indistinctly. Her words become distinct as the lights dim. It is night. So Rani asks him, "Where are you taking me?" And the eagle answers, "Beyond the 7 seas and the 7 isles, on the 7th island is a magic garden, and in that garden stands the tree of emeralds. Under that tree your parents wait for you, Rani." So Rani says, "Do they? Then please, please take me to them immediately. Here I come." So the eagle carries her clear across the 7 seas. So she is sleeping, and the whole thing is about her dream. She falls asleep, moans, "Oh mother, father," in her sleep. It gets light. She wakes up with a fright, looks around, then runs to the bathroom, mimes splashing water on her face, goes into the kitchen, starts cooking. Aparna comes, opens the lock on the front door and comes in, goes to the bathroom, mimes bathing, then comes to the kitchen and sits down to eat. She serves him food. Rani, "Listen," fumbling for words. "Listen, I feel frightened alone at night." Aparna, "What is there to be scared of? Just keep to yourself. No one will bother you." Rice. Pause. Rani, "Please, you could." Aparna, "Look, I don't like idle chatter. Do as you are told. You understand?" Finishes his meal, gets up. "I'll be back tomorrow for lunch." Aparna washes his hands, locks her in, and goes away. Rani watches him blankly through the window. Story. And so the days rolled by. Mechanically, Rani goes into the kitchen, starts cooking, talks to herself. Rani. Then Rani's parents embrace her and cry. They kiss her and caress her. At night she sleeps between them. So she is not frightened anymore. "Don't worry," they promise her. "We won't let you go away again, ever." In the morning, the stag with the golden antlers comes to the door. He calls out to Rani. She refuses to go. "I'm not a stag," he explains. "I'm a prince." Then Rani's parents embrace her and cry. They kiss her and caress her. At night, she sleeps between them. So she is not frightened anymore. "Don't worry," they promise her. "We won't let you go away again, ever." In the morning, the stag with the golden antlers comes to the door. He calls out to Rani. She refuses to go. "I'm not a stag," he explains. "I'm a prince." Rani sits staring blankly into the oven, then begins to sob. Outside in the street, Kappanna enters carrying Kurudava on his shoulders. She is blind. He is in his early 20s. So let's stop here. So the Act 1 of the story is set in a house with a yard in front of it. On the right side, you will find an enormous ant hill. So the front door of the house is locked and the spotlight reveals the interior of the house, the kitchen, the bathroom, as well as Rani's room. And the story tells us about Rani, a young girl who is the daughter of her parents. And as I told you, she is not given a name. Story does not want to give her any particular name. And therefore she chooses any name. And Rani, which means the queen of the entire world and queen of long tresses, hair. When her long hair was tied up in a knot, it looked like black king cobra lying curled on her neck, coiled upon bright coil. When her long tresses of hair was let loose, it came down tumbling to her legs like a black stream along her youthful limbs and got entangled in her silver anklets. Her father was very fond of her, and he wanted her to live happily, and therefore he chose a rich young man for her husband. And his parents, this husband's or the man whom he has, the Rani's father has chosen, his parents were dead. Rani continued to live with her parents until she attained puberty. Soon her husband came and took her to his village. So the man, failed playwright, and the story summon or Appanna. Again, by summoning Appanna, we understand what Karnad is trying to tell you is tell the audiences it's just a story. So in between the story or in between the act, the story and both the story and the playwright is calling for Appanna to come on stage. So which actually reminds us that we are just watching a play. At this, Appanna enters, followed by his beautiful young wife Rani. They carry bundles in their arms, which indicate that they have been traveling for quite distance now. Appanna opens the lock on the front door of the house, and they enter the house. Once they get in, Appanna asks Rani to check if they have brought all the bundles, and everything is checked, and then he says that he's going out and will be back the next day at noon. He asks her to keep lunch ready so that he will have his lunch and go away. Rani is speechless. She doesn't know what to say. And Appanna is not even concerned. He does not even think about what this young bride of his, whether she would feel scared. There is a very cold feeling for Appanna towards Rani. And Rani is locked inside. He shuts the door and he locks it from outside and he goes away. Rani runs to the door, pushes it and finds it locked. She looks through the barred window and finds that he's already gone. She doesn't know what is happening and she stands there all confused. She's just come home. She's just got married and just come home when all these things start happening. She goes, sits in a corner of the room and she starts talking to herself. She is imagining, or she talks to herself, and her words become clear. And we also understand that it is night then. So Rani is fantasizing. She's in her world fantasy, and she suddenly dreams of an eagle who comes and takes her off and lifts her and takes her off and tells her that her parents are standing in a magical garden, and there is a tree full of emeralds, and her parents are waiting for her under the tree. She asks the eagle eagerly that, is it true? And she requests the eagle to take her to her parents at once, and she jumps on or climbs onto the eagle. And the eagle carries her across the 7 seas, and she falls asleep. In her sleep, she makes a painful cry calling her mother and father. Remember, she's a young girl, so again there is a child marriage, a symbol which stands for child marriage here. So soon the day dawns and she wakes up with a fright. She looks around, runs to the bathroom and washes her face by splashing water, and goes to the kitchen and begins cooking. And when Appanna comes, he opens the lock of the front door and he comes. He goes to the bathroom and takes bath. comes to the kitchen and sits down for his lunch. As Rani serves him food, she tries to ask him or tell him that she feels scared to be alone at home during the night. Aparna tells her that there is nothing to be afraid of, and if she keeps to herself, nobody would bother her. When Rani opens her mouth to request him to stay with her in the house, he cuts her short by saying that he does not like idle talk. He asks her to do what she is told and not to make fuss. So he finishes his meal, gets up, washes his hand, locks her in again, and he just goes. Rani watches him go helplessly through the window. So the story informs the failed playwright, the Sutradhar, and the audience that time passes on and Rani feels all the more miserable. As soon as morning comes, Rani goes into the kitchen mechanically and starts cooking. She then, as usual, falls into a fantasy or a world of reverie, and she reaches or she calls out for her parents. She cries out and she embraces them in her dream. She kisses them, and they also take her into their arms and assures her not to worry, and also tells her that she shouldn't be scared or worried because they are not going to send her back to her husband's house. So she's not frightened anymore. But once the morning, or in the morning, she sees a stag, a golden antlers. The stag with a golden antler, it comes to the door, and he calls out to Rani, and she refuses to go. The stag explains to her that he is not a stag, as she finds him to be, but rather a prince. Suddenly her reverie breaks, and she sits staring at the oven in the kitchen blankly, and then she begins to cry. So that's where we stopped. Okay, that's a summary of what we dealt with right now, and let's look at it in a more critical way. So Nagamandala, through this play, Girish Karnad presents the deplorable state of women in India. The miserable plight of Rani, this young and beautiful girl married to a young man called Appanna, highlights the pathetic condition of Rani. She is the only child of her parents. She is called Rani because she is the queen of the wide world and long tresses. When her long hair was tied up in a knot, it was as though King Cobra lay curled on the nape of her neck, coil upon glistening coil. When it was hung loose, the tresses flowed, a torrent of black along her young limbs, and got entangled in her silver anklets. That's what the play says. Her affectionate father, he chooses her a young man named Appanna as her husband, and she is sent to her husband's house. So the marital or the married life of Rani is terrible, as we saw in the play, as we discussed, and as time passes by, it brings absolutely no joy to Rani, and she's nothing more than she goes into the kitchen mechanically, and she then every day it is the same thing, and she is left to with her by Appanna, who has absolutely no care or concern for her. So if you look at the story here, the story is a woman character in the play. So you can call her the Bhagavata of Nagamandala, a modified version of the Yakshagana, the folk theatre of Karnataka. And if you look at the way Rani is described by Girish Karnad, Karna describes Rani with delicate touches of poetry. His comparison of Rani's hair tied up in a knot to King Cobra lying curled up at the back of her neck, he employs a beautiful simile, and he introduces an element of foreshadowing the love of King Cobra and Rani and its consequence in the play later on. Okay, another thing is about the eagle that I want to tell you is about the eagle. The eagle is a bird of prey. Here it symbolizes courage and majesty. As a bird, it has the freedom of flight. Rani, in her dream, wishes for freedom to fly away from the prison that her matrimony has imposed on her. Right? And not just that, look at the word emerald trees. What are emerald? They are precious gems with green color. So green symbolizes what? Happiness, prosperity. So here again, she is trying to, trying to break free from the clutches of prison or clutches of this terrible marriage, and to escape into her parents' arms. And you can see Rani in a state of psychological regression. She resorts to escape from the cruel reality to the world of fantasy. So her suppressed longing to meet her parents come out in the form of dreams, reveries and fantasies. Her longing to go back to her parents recur again in the play to indicate the loss of her childhood security, joy and comfort, and by her coming into the house of her husband, who keeps her under lock and key, and goes out to seek company of a that we will see soon, that he goes with or to sleep with another woman, a prostitute. So that shows her psychological regressions. So through this, she just wants to escape from cruel reality by escaping into the world of fantasy, the world of dreams. Now we did go through this one with the stag with golden horns. That is also highly symbolic. At one level, it may refer to the beastly nature of Appanna as alluded to by Kurudava and her son, which we shall be discussing soon. At another level, we are reminded of the stag with golden horns tempting Sita in Ramayana, making her cross the Lakshmana Rekha. So it is possible to consider stag with golden antlers foreshadowing the seduction of Rani by Naga, the king cobra, later on in the play. So just as the stag tells Rani that he is not a stag but a prince, later on King Cobra will assume the form of Appanna, will come like Appanna, the prince, and make love to Rani. This will make Rani, though she crosses the Lakshmana Rekha, this will make Rani cross the Lakshmana Rekha and the restrictions imposed upon her by her marriage and the society. So the stag with the golden antlers is highly symbolic. So each time such characters come, the people or the audience are troubled, and they are to come out of their comfort zone and think, and through these things it actually stops the very flow of easygoing, comfortably sitting in the chair and watching the play. So here, each time such things happen, the audience is made to think, okay, there is much more than what we are seeing. There is something in it. There is some message in it that the playwright is trying to tell us through each characters, and each one alluding to various myths and legends of a particular state or even culture. So we'll stop with that, and we shall continue with Kurudava and Kappanna. Kurudava and Kappanna will be coming soon to meet Rani. Kurudava is actually Appanna's mother's friend, her childhood friend, and she comes to hear that Appanna has married a beautiful girl, and she comes to meet her friend's daughter-in-law. Appanna's mother is already dead, and Kurudava comes to meet her. So we'll just discuss as we move on with the play. We'll also discuss a few questions in relation to this play Nagamandala. Now, if you are asked to examine the features of epic theatre in Girish Karnad's Nagamandala, or if you are asked a question, trace the influence of Bertolt Brecht's epic theatre in Girish Karnad's dramatic design in Nagamandala, you can write as follows. Brecht's influence, or Girish Karnad was greatly influenced by Brecht, and his influence can be seen in almost all his plays. The characteristics, features of Brecht's epic theatre should also be mentioned. And what are the characteristics? See, Bertolt Brecht was a German poet and a playwright, and he is considered the formulator of epic theatre in the 20th century. His epic theatre, that is from 1920 onwards, is a reaction against the traditional Aristotelian theatre of illusion. The essential point of epic theatre is that it appeals less to the spectator's feelings than his reason. Brecht discusses the concept in his various works, but his main theatrical work on the topic is Little Treatise on the Theatre, which was published in 1949. Brecht used the platform as an arena which unmasked the full stage and exposed the lighting equipment that negated all romantic, symbolic, illusionist, idealistic theatre. Epic theatre demonstrates the principles of multiplicity and simultaneity. And Brecht exercised profound influence on drama, both in England, France, Italy, and United States. So it was not like the usual romantic, symbolic, illusionist, idealist theatre, but rather it was different, especially its lighting, its equipment, and all. Like we see that in our narrator, he calls in the musicians. The musicians are staged on stage, and then Appanna is summoned by the man and the story. Hey, come here. And then then you see the scene of Appanna and Rani going into their village to their house. And also you will find the lighting, the lights are turned down, which indicates night time, and the lights come out, which indicates daytime. So you find all the techniques of the traditional art forms used here. Now, so in traditional theatre, though the audience knows that they are watching an illusion of reality, it accepts it engaging in that, the willing suspension of disbelief for the moment, which constitutes the poetic faith. In challenging the traditional principles of drama, Brecht questions the value of identification or empathy. The theatrical alternative to empathy, according to Brecht, is alienation or estrangement. According to Brecht, we should not identify ourselves with the character, but we should stand back from them. Brecht assumes that when we abandon empathy, we can see the object in itself as it really is. That is, with an objective view. When we have a subjective view we empathize with the character. And when we empathize with the character, we are not able to see the reality as it should be. Okay? Our emotions take control over us. So Brecht says that we must abandon empathy, and then only we can see the object in itself as it really is. Brecht renounces the classical principle of pity and terror, the two important factors that cause Aristotle's catharsis, which in favor of which leads to purification. So here you have Brecht instead of that uses alienation or estrangement. Instead of becoming emotionally involved in the stage action, the spectator should remain a dispassionate observer and a judge. Only then we will be able to understand the world around us. Brecht's aim was to teach men to think, to shake or enrage them into revolutionary action against the social injustice. And if you are to involve subjectively or emotionally, then we will not be able to see the social injustice. But if we are dispassionate, if we view a play as a play, or if we view a play from an objective view or a dispassionate view, then various injustice of the society will be revealed to us in the form of symbols. It will be revealed to us in the form of several allusions. And therefore we become observers, we become judge, and we are actually moving out of our comfort zone. So instead of going and watching, sinking into our chairs and peacefully watching and getting entertained and not thinking at all, we start thinking. The audience is made to think. Why is it happening? What does the playwright mean by this? Because there is a lot of complexity, there is a lot of various techniques that make the audience think why such things are happening. And even by giving these dream-like sequences, we tend to view that it is a play, but at the same time something more than a play, which actually is trying to tell us something. Okay. And if you look at it or if you look at it through this technique in Karnad's play, Nagamandala, he doesn't fully exploit the alienation effect, or he doesn't completely exploit or use the epic theatre as of Karnad's play Nagamandala is actually based on folktale which involves a woman and a serpent. He claims that the play strikes a departure from emotion-based world of traditional values. According to him, the theatrical conventions Brecht was reacting against, that is, character as psychological construct providing a focus for emotional identification, Using the willing suspension of disbelief syndrome, the notion of unified spectacle were never a part of the traditional Indian theatre. So there was therefore no question of arriving at alienation effect by using Brechian artifice. What he did was to sensitize us to potentialities of non-naturalist technique available in our own theatre. So it was quite different from that of Brecht's alienation effect. Now, Brecht has used it differently and Carnot has used it differently. Carnot has used the alienation effect not the way as Brecht has used it, but he has used it in the form of folk tales. Folk tales are employed for creating the alienation effect. In Nagamandala, Carnot attempts at instilling an alienation effect by deriving the materials of the play from folk tales and also by using the non-naturalistic techniques of traditional Indian theatre. The title of the play itself is not the name of a human character, but it is the name of a snake. The story of the cobra suggests that the play is intended to dramatize not merely the folk tales, but to imply a deeper meaning at various levels. In South India, many houses have their own shrine, which is often a grove reserved for snakes, consisting of trees festooned with creepers, situated in a corner of the garden. Often a stone with a snake depicted on it is set up, and women desiring children visit it. Right? The devotees of Shiva worship the snake, which are often depicted with Shiva. Snakes are also a symbol of human maleness and strength. Often the Naga Panchami, the festival held in Shravana on the first day of the first half of the lunar moon, wrestling matches are organized and women pour offerings of milk and cereals into the snake's hole. Nagas are sometimes portrayed as handsome men or as half snake or half man. The top half of half being the torso of a man, the lower part half or lower half as a coiled snake. So Carnot has used or made use of this folk tale, and by mixing the human and non-human world as a he uses the alienation effect. So that is how Carnot has used alienation effect brought in by Bertolt Brecht. Okay, so Bertolt Brecht's use of alienation effect is different from that of Carnot's use. Carnot has used it using the theatre, our techniques of theatre. That's how he has used the alienation effect. How to make the audience understand that this is just a play, and thereby detaching them and or giving them a dispassionate or making them dispassionate observers by bringing in the Sutradhara, by bringing in the story, by intervening, interrupting, and by bringing in the musicians, and by they are standing on the stage, they are not moving away from the stage even when Rani and the story of Rani and Appanna is happening. The story and man is still on stage. Okay, so all these techniques are used to bring in the alienation effect. Yeah. Then, this is a distancing device, which the folktale element of Nagamandala and the magical power which the cobra possesses continually remind the spectator that he is only watching a play. In Nagamandala, Carnot has rejected the value of emotional identification and catharsis which Aristotle has been speaking about. So the play leaves the audience in possession of their critical faculties. It makes them think. It makes them move out of their hot seat or their comfort zone. So they may learn something. So it is didactic. And they connect it with the reality, the contemporary world, and so they learn something conducive to social realism. Okay. And also the narrator in an epic theatre, so here that is one important the role of the narrator in an epic theatre or shows. See, in epic theatre there are scenes of narrations and commentary. So here you will this narration and commentary is occupied by the narrator or the character who analyzes the action or comments on it. Epic theatre presents a series of loosely connected episodes in a simple way and in a kind of linear narration. It dispenses with the tradition of dramatic excitement and uses songs as an integral element. Neither the play nor the stage production maintains any consistent allusion to actuality. On the contrary, such illusion is to be destroyed by fragmentation of scenes and settings and interruptions of actions. So it's thereby it makes you state that it's not anything to do with reality. These magical things coming in, it makes you think that it's not to do with reality, but at the same time it makes it makes one dispassionate. It makes one not emotionally get attached to the play, and therefore whatever scenes and whatever episodes are presented there, the audience, instead of sitting back comfortably in their chairs and getting involved in the play, emotionally involved in the play, what happens is they start viewing and analyzing the play, and thereby they critically analyze it. They critically think about it. Okay, so it is a technique in which they use these narratives or these traditional theatre forms to present before the audience that they are just watching a play. It's not anything where you should be emotionally attached. So what happens in return is you don't get emotionally attached, you have a detached emotion which makes you critically analyze things or fight against the social injustice. Okay, and you have the painters and the musicians, their presence are felt through their artificial means. And another aspect of calling this play or having the features of epic theatre is the characters of the prologue. They are the narrator characters of Nagamandala. So Nagamandala is a play within a play, and it begins with a prologue. And the characters of the prologue are the narrator characters of the play. Okay, they are the ones who are narrating. Alright, and their story constitutes the subplot of the play. So the setting of the play prologue is in the inner sanctum of a ruined temple. You find the playwright who is in a morose stance. He's sitting in the temple. He's sad because a mendicant has told him that he has to keep awake. And the man has been dozing off to sleep, and that night is the last night. His guilt is that he has written awful plays, and so he's cursed because of making people fall asleep twisted in miserable chairs, and therefore you have the curse of death on him. And if he survives, he will abjure all storytelling and all story play and all play acting. So all this are said by the narrated characters. So they become the character as well as the narrators of the play Nagamandala. That's also one technique used in the epic theatre. Another salient feature of the epic theatre is the use of chorus and music. So we haven't come to chorus. We have started with music. You heard, you saw the narrator, the Sutradhar, in the musicians, and therefore that's one aspect, the use of chorus and music in Nagamandala. And all the songs are sung by the flames. So at this time of night, the man hears the female voices outside the temple, and these flames are the ones who giggle and come in, and all these are actually, the chorus and the music, in which forms the salient and an important feature of epic drama. Another one is part of the epic drama is the linear narration, or they are loosely connected episodes in a kind of linear narration. In Nagamandala, there are loosely connected episodes in a kind of linear narration, which is one feature that you see in epic theatre. So as in an epic theatre, so in Nagamandala, there are loosely connected episodes in a kind of linear narration. Through Kurudava, the blind woman, though Kurudava, the blind woman, plays a significant part in Nagamandala, her marriage to a boy distantly related to her, her intense love for her son Kappanna, and her subsequent insanity form the subplot of the play. The only way in which Kurudava is connected with the plot of the play is that the cobra falls in love with Rani because of the magical influence of the root given by Kurudava to Rani. So Kurudava has been the best friend of Appanna's mother, and therefore you will find how these loosely connected episodes form a kind of linear narration. So these are the important aspects or things that you have to remember when you connect this story Nagamandala with the technique of epic theatre. Okay. So thank you and keep safe.